stressful.
We have,
Yes.
What are you recording gonna go public or is it gonna just stay?
it's in, we have Craig.
Ask Eddie that.
This is going out just like any other Bible class. Now, what do you mean by public? I don't know.
Well,
It's not going on.
I'm just kind of curious, well, like, will candidates know that this, is out for their consumption?
If they click around on the website, would they be able to find it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could. Yeah.
So,
Behave yourself.
which would be a wonderful bit of research for them to do in anticipation of
And remember,
applying.
any candidate is looking at us as well as us looking at them. Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming and being a part of the life of this church while we were in this process of searching for a new minister. So it's been 2.5 months since Chris resigned, and we've all experienced many emotions during this time. Perhaps a sense of sadness and loss are at the top of the list. You may have feelings directed toward Chris or about him. Or you may have feelings about how the leadership has handled this situation. I know I have had a lot of different emotions. I felt disappointment. I felt confusion. I felt perplexed. I felt protective on the behalf of many of you. I've also felt angry about the harm that was done to us. But I also felt during this time period very comforted. I felt encouraged, rejuvenated, and hopeful. I have felt compassion, and I have been the recipient of compassion. I have felt love, and I have felt loved. I have felt grateful. I have felt a sense of forgiveness. And all of these emotions come because of the life of the Spirit that is among us. And so I hope you have felt similarly. Many of you have spoken individually with me or one of the elders, or you may have not, and you may feel stuck in one of these uncomfortable feelings. So if that's the case, please talk to us. Perhaps you'll be able to share a perspective. Maybe we will be able to share a perspective or to answer questions that may have been burdening you. So now that we are past this stage of shock and those early feelings of grief, I think God has made us ready now to move on in a healthy way. Just stop for a moment. Any comments or questions at this point before we move into the heart of what we're doing? Nope. Okay. So we've already had a few inquiries from outside the church about these this open ministerial position, and these individuals have been told that we are not yet formally engaged in this pursuit of looking for a minister just yet. So we said, in a couple months we'll be ready. The fact that there are these inquiries, I find to be very encouraging. So this brings us kind of to this timeline regarding the search. So last week, we confirmed a committee consisting of myself, Eddie, Ashley, David, and Kelly, who's upstairs taking care of our children as usual. So we've started working together. So the role of the committee is to search and do research and then recommend a small number of candidates to the elders. The role of the elders will be to make that final choice. Your role is to pray and to listen to the Spirit. Your role is to share your thoughts, participate in these sessions like this, and there will be more, and to express your spiritual needs and the desires of your hearts. There will not be a vote amongst the eldership, amongst the group. But the final decision will rest with the elders. We will constantly be praying for wisdom, and we'll be doing so specifically in this process. We will make decisions among ourselves by consensus, not by a vote, but certainly by the grace of God. That's how we generally make decisions all together. We just keep talking until we figure out what's the best step forward. So we hope we will begin interviewing and doing research with candidates in January. And as we see a possible fit, we will be inviting the candidates to come and spend a weekend with us, preaching and possibly teaching. There will also be events whereby you'll be able to meet the candidates and his or her family if they choose to come. This may take several months, and even after a candidate has been identified, they may not be able to move here for a few more months. They may have to close up their lives, sell houses, school schedules might be impacting the schedule as well. So we might be looking at sometime in the spring, the summer, that will draw all this to a conclusion. I've been very encouraged by the people who have come to preach for us, like Kayla this morning, coming again to us, and those who are teaching, and by the people who have stepped into various roles. We have been blessed by some very, very gifted people. And as the life of the church unfolds, you will be needed. You'll be needed during these upcoming months. For example, Naomi Walters and her family, husband and 2 kids, are coming back for a weekend in December when she will preach for us that Sunday. That's the 17th. Kristen and Matt Andrews have graciously offered to host them in their home. There will be a reception for them following the church services, and perhaps you could be a part of a team of people that would like to handle that reception. That's December 17th. So put that in your mind. Is that someplace where you could be of service to the church body? Our Christmas sing-along is in a few weeks, and there will be many ways you can help with this event. So think again, how can I be of service to this church body? Again, we thank you for being here and your participation this morning. So we are so blessed to have David, who is a professional employment recruiter and the world of nonprofits. So I'm going to run upstairs and see what the teams are doing with all that food that everyone has, and I'll be right back down, but turn things over to David. So, okay. And I'll be right back.
Slide over. Yeah. Morning, everyone. So, this is an important time period for the church in the transition, but one of the things I want to echo with what Debbie just said is that there is an abundance, an overwhelming abundance of talent within this congregation and with all the friends and family of the congregation to pitch in. And with that said, there is not a rush to make decisions. There is not a rush to go through this process. I think the search committee and the elders and this congregation want this to be a methodical, thoughtful, reflective process. As part of this reflective process, we will be having, as you probably noted during the email that went out earlier this week, that there will be these listening tours or these listening meetings in which we want to get a sense from the members of this congregation as to what are going to be the important parts for you, what resonates for you, what you value, what excites you, etc. So we want to be thoughtful and respectful of all the voices here. We have a combination and a wide diversity of voices, and that's part of the reason many of us are here, because we celebrate and we embrace that level of thoughtful diversity of thoughts and opinions, and we want to hear it and we want to take our time. So just to let folks know that as we begin this process, it's not going to be a rush process. If there are people who have thoughts now, they should feel free to share them. If there are folks here who would rather not share them in a larger setting, we do have handouts, which we'll provide later on in this conversation, that if folks want to put their thoughts on paper, and be it anonymous or not, and just give it either to the elders or members of the search committee, that will be very helpful for us. Okay, so I guess we want to begin, whenever we begin a search process, what I generally like to have people, the stakeholders, be a part of is, we're gonna look forward. And we're gonna look back, we're not gonna ignore the past, but we want to look forward and we want to think about where the church, what the church is and what it means to us. So oftentimes during a search process, when I meet with board members, their first inclination is to say, we're looking for X person, we're looking for this person to do this, that, or the other. And I generally tell them, there will be a time to have that level of a conversation. We're not at that point right now. So the conversation today is not going to be, we want a person to do X, we want a person to do Y, or we don't want a person to do X or Y. We want to think first about ourselves and the congregation and where we're at and what makes us special. So to begin the conversation, the first question that we throw out to the group is, how would you describe the Stanford Church of Christ? I know that some people would describe the Church of Christ one way, and they may have a different perspective of the Stanford Church of Christ, which is a very unique and special place. So with that said, we'll sort of open up the floor. And again, this is a safe space for us to talk about the church, to talk about what it means to you, what the Stanford congregation means to you. Because that allows the search committee and the elders to think about, so in terms of how we think about the process, we want to think about where the church is and what it is, and then work our way backwards in establishing the competencies of the next preacher that comes in. So that's the beginning of the conversation is, how would you describe the Stanford Church of Christ?
And if you would, either speak up, or stand and speak. It's a great room now, but you still need to project so everyone can hear you. All right, thank you.
Chocolate.
I think of the church as being inclusive and diverse, and I think that's something that we're working towards. I think because we're such a diverse body, we're such a diverse church, we're working towards including more people of different class and race. I think that's something we're working towards, and I think that's really we need to find someone who is open to working with a diverse body of believers.
I would also say we're diverse, but I think it's also diversity, in thought and in perspective. So we all have different views on one thing as well. I would also say that, lost my thought, but that, lost it.
We'll be here.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back to that. I was gonna say that the church has been led by experienced senior ministers. And I might suggest that, for good 30 somewhat years, Dale was that experienced leader. And then we had a period where we had another senior minister come. And then we had Chris, who was a senior minister, and we sort of benefit of his experience. And so I think the church has some heritage. It's not a startup church. It has roots, it has maturity, it has age. And I think that it would be a consideration in finding a senior minister.
I'm gonna finish mine quickly, but I think I'm gonna say, the word I wrote is heady. Meaning we have a great comprehension of a lot of things. I think you can say that there were times that he was talking to people who really understood more than people he was talking to in Memphis. I think we are, and that sort of speaks for us, and that hopefully that makes sense.
I'm currently taking continuing education for my license. Our industry is changing. You have to keep up, and I think of education in the same way as a continuing education on how to be a Christian is as the world is changing around us, and how to stay and be loving, respectful, appreciating of other people. So the church, to me, is a school on how to continuously to be better and then your word gets spoken.
Eva?
What everyone else said before me is the church being inclusive, diversity, and but what translates to for me is loving kindness. I really feel this, I've been in and out of this church for this particular for many years, but every single time I come back, the first thing I get is a big hug and welcome back. I did a lot of research in other churches, and I always keep coming back because this feels like home. And that's what I wish that we expand on it, that it feels like home, loving kindness.
And that's a great comment, David, because I know a lot of times when we have folks who leave and they come back to visit, they'll often, one of the things they'll often say is, this is my home. Even with people who have been gone 10 or 15 years, they come back. I think Ray and Ann Newton were here maybe 6 weeks ago. And they say, they've been gone for probably 10, 15 years. And they came back and said, just what you said, this is home. Yes.
This just kind of flows along and adds in a little. I grew up in the Church of Christ in Ohio. And as somebody who moved here as the nanny for a family, I knew nobody except the people I worked for. And immediately, this became, the people here became my family. I mean, I was greeted by Sylvia. I talked on the phone, I think, to Dale before I came for the first time. And from somebody who, all the churches I could have gone to in Akron, I mean, I had a lot of choices. And then I came here and I'm like, oh, there's one Church of Christ in Stanford and there's one in Trumbull. And it seemed like they were so far away. I mean, I was in New Canaan, so this was kind of my only choice, but it turned out to be the best choice. And it is really family. And even more so, I mean, I've been here longer than I was in Ohio now. And I can't imagine being anywhere else.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Anna, because I live 5 minutes from that Trumbull Church of Christ. and I've been coming here for a long period of time, and I grew up in the Church of Christ, and I grew up with a minister from Abilene, so I am familiar with that hard. I should say hard. Let me take that back. Let me say traditional.
No, it was hard. Rock hard, rigid.
Yes. So this is a special place, and that's why we wanted to describe it as, how would we not, the question isn't how do we describe the Church of Christ? The question is, how do we describe the Stanford Church of Christ, which is a very unique, congregation in a perhaps more traditional ecosystem of Churches of Christ. And I think many of us here, like you, Anna, come here because we believe in the Church of Christ, and we grew up in it, but there were still some things that maybe we wanted to see a little bit differently, and so we're here. But Coney, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I see us as a spiritual academy for the messed up.
Yeah.
Write that down.
A spiritual academy for the messed up.
Oh.
The spiritual academy for the messed up.
Okay. Rosemary?
Following Anna's direction, we are also a family who could roll out of bed in 5 minutes, be at the White Plains Church of Christ, and choose to make this trip here. So whoever is looking at us as a possible congregation needs to know that we are not just Stanford. Our geographics go far. Queens, Manhattan, there's a lot of people.
The Bronx.
The Bronx. Bethel.
No, that's a great point, because I remember years ago when the kids were younger, we had a young family that was driving in from Princeton. All places weekly. And that was a long haul. I mean, yes, so that says something there, because I know there's a Princeton, there's actually, I think, 2 Churches of Christ in the proper Princeton Junction area. And they chose to trek all the way here, with their like 8-month-old and 10-month-old at the time.
Yeah.
That's, for people who have young kids, that's not easy.
Right.
Eric?
I guess, I don't know if I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but actually there were 2 things, but the fact is that, yeah, we're not only, we're we are, the best word to describe this church to me is diverse. Because we have people from different social economic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, different geographical backgrounds, different parts of the world. And whoever fills this position has got to be open. They have to be just as open and capable of handling that range of diversity. Because we were not going to change that much, we're not suddenly going to become, an all white or an all black, charismatic church to suit the minister. That's not going to happen, and we wouldn't want it to. I just, like I said, the fact is that most of us have benefited from the 3 decades of teaching of Dale. So where I think we are, we're a lot more, I don't know if the right word, not philosophical, but we are more religiously educated than your quote unquote, and I use heavy air quotes, standard church, whether it be Church of Christ or Baptist or whatever. We have someone who basically had enough life experience 30 years ago to go for a doctorate and didn't because of us, and spent the next 20 some odd years teaching us the stuff he was practicing for his doctorate. And second of all, Jane had a question. I saw her raise her hand about 5 minutes ago.
Thank you for noticing.
Jane from the Bronx.
Yeah, well, Annie's had her hand up since I had mine up. I affirm everything that's been said, and one of the things that draws me to Stanford and keeps me connected at Stanford is the rich diversity that you all have spoken about in so many different ways this morning. There's a shadow side. There's an old dead psychiatrist that used to tell us that all these strengths, there's also a shadow side to that strength, and we have I think a pretty well formed theological, if I can use that word, diversity in this congregation, but I don't think, I don't know exactly how to say this, I'm really struggling with it. I think that's an area where I would like to see us really be intentional about growing in our biblical and theological groundedness for the life together that we experience in this congregation. I hope that makes some sense. I may take another stab at this somewhere down the road when I think about it more.
And thank you for that, Jane. And the third question that will come to this afternoon will touch upon a little bit of what you just raised. So think about that. And when we get to the third question, if you want to add or amend what you just said, that'll be helpful. Annie, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, I'll do this as quickly as I can. So my first 2 words, Sheldon, were diverse and inclusive that I wrote down. I wrote down things very quickly when David had his question. My next word was friendly. Then I wrote, the members here are honest. And I feel safe. We feel safe. I believe we create a space for others to be honest. And I think that's really important. Honesty is important because then we do understand who people are. You can't understand somebody if they're not, if they don't feel comfortable to be honest. I think we value the gifts of others, and we have a very strong willingness to create forums for those gifts. Buddy mentor, Shiloh, whatever, you know, gardening, you know, arts and crafts, it doesn't matter. We are like, yeah, you want to do something? Let's talk about it. And in addition to that, we create, where people feel comfortable here creating conversations about things, even if they're lead balloons, you know, we feel comfortable. I think that goes kind of back to the safety piece. And if I could go back to your very beginning when you were talking about, you know, what we're looking for, is I think we want to look for, we don't want to just solve current problems of this church. The question is, what do we want to create? Because right now we have an opportunity to create something that we want. So it could be exactly the same, or it could be marginally different or markedly different. So, you know, Debbie led that. I think Debbie, with what she said, also led into that same concept. So, and because of the intelligence that has already been brought up as well from other people, you know, we have that ability, and the honesty, the gifts, everything, this is very fertile territory. So I think if we honestly present to people what we want to create, I think the right individuals will come our way.
Great. And that's an interesting point, Annie, about the opportunity. You know, sometimes when organizations go through a transition, there is a period of shock, a period of remorse, a period of sadness. But then it's also helpful to remember there's a period of opportunity here. And as Annie said, this is an opportunity here for us now in a thoughtful, reflective process to think about how to continually make this church a safer, better, more diverse, et cetera, place. The second question, I want to be mindful of the time. The second question is a little bit similar to the first, and that is, you know, what is the Stanford Church of Christ really good at? You know, what are you proud that this church is doing, has done, is on the verge of doing, you know?
I think we're really good at having meaningful worship service.
Can't hear you.
I think we're great at having meaningful worship service, and I think, you know, with Eddie and the people that are contributing, we've had some great service. This is good.
I think the pandemic really helped highlight the talents that we had, because we had to, you know, piecemeal those services at the beginning, right? Everything was on video and pieced together. And I was just literally blown away by being able to see people sort of in more of a focused light than I would in a regular service. And then we called on people more to do special things, probably more because of the pandemic. So that was a tremendous gift, but thank you.
Recording?
Jill, your hand raised.
Okay.
I think we're great at making people feel loved and welcomed. Almost every visitor that has ever come with me, they felt that no matter where they were in their life, that they felt welcome, they didn't feel judged, they felt that they could come as they are. And I think that's a key part of who we are as a Stanford Church, because a lot of places use scripture to not include people. And our message is about love and inclusion, and everyone that I've ever known has always felt that.
Great. Eva?
I think we're very good in the community outreach. We're doing a lot, but we're always reaching to do a little more. And so that I think we are pretty good in. We probably can do more, but we're very good in community outreach.
Great. Robert?
Yeah, I'd just like to say two things. One, I want to say, I think to the 40 some odd years that I've been coming here, I think the teaching is excellent, and I have to emphasize Dale Pauls was just incredible, did an incredible job with that. And I just also want to say that I'm really thankful and feel fortunate and grateful that I have somebody like Debbie and Dale to talk to about the situation with losing our minister and my feelings and how I feel about losing, Chris Altrack. Thank you.
Great, thanks. One of the things in terms of what we're good at, I come back to Aaron, what you said. We've been lucky as a congregation to have really high level, in-depth study of the scriptures. That doesn't happen in a lot of congregations, a lot of Stanford Church of congregation. It doesn't. It's basically there's a lot of things at the surface, but we don't dig down. And because of the skill sets of, Charles, Charles and Dale and Brendan, all the others have really helped us sort of dig deeper. I have to say personally, some of it does go over my head. But when I read the room and I listen to the input that people have, I'm amazed at how much people in this congregation and down here, people are absorbing and are hungry for that sort of rigor. So I believe that's also where we're really good at. Charles?
Yeah, I wanted to say that, I've been here about a year, so not a long time. But one thing that really impressed me from the very first time I came here was how put together every.
That was perfect.
Try this again. What impressed me was how put together the church seemed, and it's all the way down from how beautiful this building is, but how well it's kept, and how efficiently everything is run, how people take pride in keeping things clean and organized, how well run the service is, how it feels tight and together. And for somebody new coming in, that says a lot about a lot of things. When the building, when you walk into a building and it's just, you feel like it's just kind of tolerated or thrown together, or it's not well maintained, that says a lot about a lot of other things. To me, it does. And so I was just amazingly impressed. And that's one of the reasons I chose to come here. The other reason I chose to come here is because it's really clear that the reason, to me, it seems like that this congregation over a long period of time has done the hard theological work to sustain the kind of diversity and inclusion that it now lives, right? Those kinds of things, that kind of stuff just doesn't happen. But it's been because of the leadership and the preaching and the teaching that you can get to a place of being welcoming, of being affirming, of being inclusive of all people, right? And it is a little bit like a few other people said, there's other places that I could go to church on Sunday morning without taking the train on the way. But it's because of that I want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere else. And so whatever comes next, I don't think it would be any other way, but I wanted to see that continue.
Well, we're running a little tight on time, so I wanted to make sure we jump to the third question and the last question for this morning. There'll be other sessions and other opportunities for people to contribute and to share their thoughts and reflections, but I want to make sure we sort of finish up the third question. And that is, where do we need to do better? How can we grow? Eva, you mentioned a little bit about how we grow, but where can we grow and how can we do better?
Holding on to a minister. Sorry.
All right.
Would you block Andy Dino, please?
I can mute.
On mute.
Comment on Annie's comment.
Yeah, Jane, so you want to just finish up that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not wild about triennial ministerial transitions, which is what we've kind kind of had going on. But I want to, with all, all respect and gratitude and affirmation for the plan laid out at the beginning of this session to be interviewing candidates by January. David, you have more experience with this than probably anybody in the conversation. That just seems super fast to me. I've done some of this kind of stuff in the past, and to be interviewing candidates, that's 2 months from now. And it's Advent and Christmas, and Thanksgiving thrown in. So it's typically a very busy season for most congregations, as I think it is for Stanford. And I just, let's not rush to get a minister. And I'm not saying that that has a direct bearing on the length of tenure of the previous ministers. I think it probably doesn't, but I still think it's wise to spend a lot of time doing what we're doing this morning, figuring out who we are and what we want. And not only what we want, but what we need. And I don't know if there's any place in the plan to talk with, I'll call them friends of the people who are not members, people who may have visited a few times, but didn't find what all of us have found here and moved on someplace else for whatever reason. I've never, ever been to a church that did not describe itself as warm and friendly. And I think that's true of Stanford, but I have been in churches for years, 3, 4, 5 years, and that was not my experience at all. And I suspect there might be some people out there. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head here, but let's not rush. Let's really take our time. Not only in terms of searching and looking out there at who's available and who's interested in us, but I think what we're doing this morning, and I understand you're saying there's going to be more of it, this kind of introspective conversation where we're trying to figure out who we are, who we are. Frederick Buechner has a wonderful, I can't quote it exactly, but the memories of the things that have made us who we are and the hopes that we have of who we would yet become. And Buechner's talking about individuals, but I think you can apply this to a congregation. Looking back, and there are people in the room who can look who can look all the way back to the very beginning and rehearse for some of the rest of us the memories of the things that have made us who we are. And it seems to me that the crown of that list probably has to do with diversity and inclusion. But there are other things as well that should be on that list. What is it that's, as I'm overquoting Buechner, and then to spend an equal amount of time really in thoughtful prayer and conversation with each other as well as with God about who we would yet become. What are the visions that we have? What are the dreams that we have of who we as a congregation would yet become? And so Frederick Buechner, if anybody's interested.
Great. Yes, thank you, Jane. We have just a few more minutes left. I think Sheldon and Laconia had their hands up. So Sheldon, why don't we start with you? We've got a few more minutes, so we're going to try to go quickly.
In regards to your question about what things we can work on, I think that for whatever reason, I think when it comes to younger members of the congregation, I think it's been challenging for us to nurture their, I don't know, their spirituality, because once they finish high school, it seems to me a lot of them move away, and, you know, I don't know what we can do about that exactly, but the congregation is, you know, as we go around the room, it's, you know, it's a generational difference between younger people here and, you know, middle-aged, older people. So I think that's something we need to work on, something we can, I don't know, brainstorm about, but I think that's a challenge for us and a challenge for a lot of churches. You know, how to nurture the next generation of leaders and members, so that's something we can talk about in the future, I guess.
Thanks, Sheldon. Coney, and then maybe just one more.
Yeah, I want to bring this up because I think it's important. 25 years, most of us are not going to be in this. Most of us, or a lot of us, will be gone. And I think one of the things we have to think about, we have great leadership, but I think we also have to think about a post-Dale and a post-Debbie church. Because we spend a lot of time and they have influenced stuff a lot. And I'm thankful for that. But I think we need to take the pressure off of them and think about the church for the future.
We've tried twice.
Eva?
So we have to try again. Third time's the charm.
Yeah. So Eva, and then we have to go to our prayer time.
I was baptized in the Manhattan Church of Christ, and I was a member of that church until I moved to Connecticut, which was about 7 years. What I experienced that we had basically as our congregation, if someone needed help in congregation, sick, couldn't get out of the house, rides to the church, things like that. Maybe we have something like this that I am not aware of it, but I hear like people are homebound. What do they do for food? Is someone there to help them? This is what I think we could do better, you know, as our congregation, to be more involved with each other and to help each other in the time of needs.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Before we move on to the prayer, just to let you know, we have a handout here with the 3 questions. If you feel more comfortable in writing your notes down and giving it to a member of the committee or the member of the elders, that will be helpful too. We're also going to try to do this electronically through a SurveyMonkey link for people who are not here physically or who may not, as I think Eva, you had indicated, for maybe for past members that we could send it to as well.
Yeah,
all right.
I sent a electronic this morning
Okay.
of this.
Okay.
This first time.
I'm sorry, question, David, this is a small group of the congregation. Is there a plan to have a forum discussion during worship time where we have more people represented?
No, we're inviting them in, and sending out this and the survey.
Yeah.
And if they can't get that, I don't know.
That's good.
And I don't know who's doing the prayer.
Well, I'm going to make a decision with, I hate making decisions but we need to hit toward worship. And what this sheet is valuable for is what's often embraced. I mean, I've got the 2 or 3 things. I'm glad you filled out the sheet, but I think that will work for this morning. And we need to probably continue discussion one-on-one to get to